So you hear about a story that's a myth. It's actually a story about you being told through thousands of years of time over campfires and everything else, because what we consider our distant past is also our distant future. It's being activated right now, and it will be activated fully exactly on the timeline that it's supposed to. It's entirely dependent on our level of consciousness.
What's the timeline?
This is all Lemurian. This is super old stuff. And these are symbols of Inca? There's not supposed to be astrological symbols of Inca? Really? Come on. For this to have been carved by man would mean that it would have to be carved like 12,000 years ago, making this one of the oldest prehistoric, man-made sites in the world.
What are you remembering, Robert?
That's what we're all living. I'm remembering our future and our past. That's what I'm saying. It's all entangled. And if we don't look, we can miss it all.
You said the dragon represents the next dimension.
Yes, because when the snakes become the dragon that eats its own tail, that's when you've moved into the next dimensional frame. When you realize that the nature of time is that it both goes forward and backwards at the same time.
Sir Daddy Robert Edward Grant. Welcome back.
Sir Daddy. Wow.
Welcome back.
I can't say I've ever heard that one before.
That's what I'm calling you now, brother. That's what I'm calling you now.
Sir Daddy. Wow. Okay.
Brother, welcome back on Just Happen. Third time.
It's great to be here.
Third time repeating.
Third time repeating. Wow.
Interesting. And the last show we did together created a very incredible vortex based off pure synchronicity. I have a feeling that's going to emerge again as we're still quantum entangled to that last conversation. We're just continuing it. I've heard you say that our awakening helps us remember that we created all of this. And we leave these little synchronicities for ourselves and we're watching it all play backwards, which we call forward time. I'd love to know, what are these little synchronicities that you're leaving behind for yourself on your path that is now beginning to emerge for you and you're beginning to realize it?
Wow. That's a deep question, my friend. So nice way to start. Every day that goes by is becoming a decryption for me of something I left myself through time. And what this is doing is it's awakening me to the nature of my multidimensional self. So I think this is what the actual reference to the sarcophagus in the king's chamber is actually all about, which is actually, it's supposed to be the reference, I believe, to the killing of Osiris by his brother Set, and he goes into a coffin, and the sarcophagus is representation of that coffin. And then you have a spiritual rebirth coming out of that. And the spiritual rebirth not only is a spiritual awakening, but it's also an awakening into the multidimensional aspect of yourself through time. So the veil gets, thinner and thinner and thinner, so that you could start to experience that, wait a minute, I'm living in all these different time dimensions simultaneously. And until now, I've been disconnected from them, but now I can actually connect into them. And it's not just the time dimensions of myself in other timelines, like in other past life incarnations, but it's actually the time dimensions of myself that are still happening simultaneous to now, of me at different ages in my life. Right? So I don't think that there's a multiverse from the perspective that there's a different universe for every decision point I make or I don't make. I don't believe that. I believe that everything is preset, like in the context of where you have to realize that we're dimensionally limited avatars that are put here by our higher self to experience emotional states. And each one of the experiences that we have are entirely unique, because even though they might have signatures of the same sort of lessons in them, you can never step in the same river twice. right? I mean, where you put your foot or your ankle gets wet, it's not the same water now that it was 10 seconds ago. So the river's changed. And all the information in that river's also changed during that time period. So I see it as the same thing for us. Time is like a river and the river's round. And it's a Mobius that basically reverts back on itself. And I fundamentally believe that, and I'm going to share some of the stuff with you because some of it's like super, super recent. So, the stuff I got on this trip to Peru, which was incredibly a phenomenal trip. But in addition to that, even coming back from that trip, it has unlocked and awakened new aspects in myself that I wasn't formerly aware of. And I just decrypted another major decryption of Leonardo da Vinci's work yesterday that nobody's, essentially seen yet. I haven't even put it on social media at all yet because I'm trying to figure out how best to, it's like there's the download and then there's how do I basically communicate this?
Yeah, the
Right.
marketing
And
aspect.
it's going to take me a while. So I can learn how to get past, the algorithms. Right. But I found another overlay that is beautiful and it was profound. It's a super profound one. You may have seen the work I did on Mona Lisa
Yeah.
with Vitruvian Man, right? So there was like this, shackle that's hanging out, looks like the shape of an omega off to the side of the Mona Lisa. And then you've got a, kind of like a broken shackle on the right wrist of the Vitruvian Man. And so I had this idea, okay, what if I place the Vitruvian Man whose hands touch both sides of the box that he's in, and I put inside that proportionally, right, the Mona Lisa inside that same box from its width perspective, and then rest his feet on the same place that her hands are rested. And then what happens to the circle? Well, the circle then encompasses the Mona Lisa's head, and the right wrist of the Vitruvian Man fits perfectly inside the shackle that's strangely off to the left side of the Mona Lisa. And it's the shape of omega. And then on the Vitruvian Man's left wrist, it says alpha. There's a letter A there. You've seen this before,
I
right?
have, yes.
So I knew all along that there was going to be another overlay on the Last Supper painting. And I knew it was somehow going to relate to the Vitruvian Man. But I didn't know how that was going to turn out. I had no idea how it was going to turn out, and I couldn't remember how to do it. And then I solved it yesterday. And what came out of it is like nothing short of like mind-bogglingly astounding. And I'll share it with you and show it to you. I'm just going to have to make sure that I've got it all here. But because, sometimes it doesn't always update so quickly on your computer desktop from what you did on the, oh, it looks like it did. Good. Okay. So let me first see if I could find the illustration of the Mona Lisa so you guys can at least look to see, because it's actually a parallel that's very significant. Right. And that's kind of the deal. Okay, let me see if I can find it here. Okay. So pull this up. So I'm just going to pull up a picture of Mona Lisa and you'll see what I'm talking about here. Screen. But I promise it's totally related to what you're talking about. And I think it's because that's what's happening. We're really waking up to this extra dimensional aspect of ourselves, and it's happening all around the world. It's all happening at the same time. And it's incredibly beautiful too.
It is.
Which is, really mind-blowing. All right. Can you see that?
There we are.
All right. So here's this little weird thing. What is this thing?
The Mona.
Yeah, but you see this little black omega on its side, or letter C shape right here?
On the shackle, yeah, up top.
Yeah, that's like a shackle, right?
Above the river.
Yeah, above the river.
Hmm.
So first of all, you notice a few things about this painting. They're like kind of weird. Like notice there's a river on this side and there's a road on the other.
Yeah.
Right? So this road turns into water up here, and the river turns into land up here. Right? Well, first of all, these are two snakes. And this is a staff of Hermes coming into place. Right? Okay. So now let's look at Vitruvian Man. Let's see if we could find, on Vitruvian Man, what's there. Let's see. So we'll switch over to another one here. All right. So this is on my website. You can see this, right?
Yep.
Okay. So here's this shackle, right? Now, what I realized is that basically I could take and look at this right here. Why is it that Vitruvian Man, he's got 14 lines on his body, right? These lines represent the exact same locations of the lines of the cuts of Osiris by his brother Set when he killed him. And then the 1/14th is referenced up in the top text of Vitruvian Man. But what I noticed is that the right wrist has a different characteristic associated with it. You could see two lines here. There's a line that's the same on the left wrist right here, but there's another line to the right of it right here. You see that?
Yep.
Right. So on his wrist, there's another line. And also it looks as though there is a broken shackle hanging off his wrist right here. It's like you see these dots coming off. It's almost like done in invisible ink.
Yeah, like scrubbed off almost.
Almost like it's scrubbed off, right? So then what I did is I said, well, what would happen if I put his fingers up against the exact edges of Mona Lisa? And would it actually connect the two? Would the wrist fit right where the shackle was on the wrist? And it does. Look at that.
Yep, exactly.
Like, what the heck, right? It's like a key fitting in a lock. So I looked at that and said, okay, is there something else like that I could use, right? That would be also geometric with the Last Supper painting and Vitruvian Man, and do all of the paintings by Da Vinci after 1486, after his visit to Egypt, not only connect esoteric wisdom teachings inside of them, but do they also connect to Egypt? And they all do. They absolutely all do. So this is like a multi-painting masterpieces that is multidimensional, and we don't even know. That's why we look at something that seems so banal as the Mona Lisa, but it's so enigmatic. It's what our souls are attracted to. That's why all of his works are masterpiece works. They're all encrypted. Now look what happens when we place the fingers of Vitruvian Man into the box and then place Mona Lisa into the page in the same way. I put his feet on the same thing proportionally that her wrists are on top of. And then look, her head is perfectly crowned by the circle of Vitruvian Man, and her eye becomes the eye of Horus at the crown chakra. Seems pretty fundamental to me, right? And then you've got two snakes on both sides. And I didn't even realize that this was a staff of Hermes being created.
Yeah.
Until I was at Gaia filming, and it was all extemporaneous, and I was like talking about it, looking at this picture, and I was like, oh my gosh, it's a freaking staff of Hermes. I got this download of it right then and there. And the two snakes are that. And the snake of the land turns into the water, and the snake of the water turns into the land. It's pretty epic, right? So then I thought, well, okay, is there something I could do just like this that relates to the Last Supper and Vitruvian Man? Right? And so this is what the information I got was. Right. Okay, here we go. So what I started doing is I started realizing that there's a very specific Metatron's cube. And this very specific Metatron's cube has the capability that it relates to the pentagon. So the pentagon represents the heart, right? We were just talking about the heart. When someone's in the heart and they're also in the logos, that's like a really rare thing.
Hmm.
When they could be in both pathos and logos, it's a super rare thing. And so what I realized was that there might be a way to look at the Last Supper painting, knowing that it relates very directly to a particular geometric form. And that particular geometric form is right here. Okay. So if we look at this, I know you can see my cursor. Yeah, you can.
Yeah, I can.
All right. So we have a circle here, right? And you could see that what frames the distance between this circle and the outer circle is a pentagon.
Yeah.
So what this is really showing is that this is like the heart or the pathos. So we tend to think about pathos and logos as two equal and opposite things in a way, right? But actually we're thinking about it the wrong way. There's a deeper metaphor here. People often think, okay, well, to be heart-centered, we need to be heart-led, right? Or the heart needs to somehow take over from the logos. And that's not what this is telling us. What this is telling us is that the heart needs to envelop the logos. The logos needs to be inside the heart. It's a different concept. Instead of thinking, okay, the feminine has to lead the masculine, in this case, the masculine needs to be inside the feminine. And that metaphor translates also to, of course, how we end up, making love. We have to be inside that consciousness. And so this is the only way to draw a Metatron's cube that's actually able to create a truly three-dimensional, proportionally correct dodecahedron.
Wow.
So there's a dodecahedron inside here. You can't really see it that well. I'm going to trace the pentagon right here. That's a perfect dodecahedron. Normally a Metatron's cube cannot do it. The only way to do it, because normally I would take this point of the Merkaba and connect to the center point here. That's the way Drunvalo Melchizedek teaches it. It's incorrect. It's not the correct way to do it. So I discovered this method using a pentagon on the outer circle and then placing the Merkaba inside of that, right? And by doing that, it creates something very unique. And I realized that the way to create that is by starting off with a 2-to-1 rectangle. So I'm going to trace right here. This rectangle goes from here down to here and across here to here. That is 2 long and 1, right, in its width. That's exactly the proportions of the king's chamber.
Yep.
A 2-to-1 rectangle. So it's 20 cubits by 10 cubits. And the height from the floor to the ceiling is exactly from the radius point to the corner of that rectangle becomes the height from floor to ceiling, which is 11.18 cubits. Okay? So now we have a king's chamber that is based entirely on a 2-to-1 rectangle, which is what? The metaphor of 2-to-1 in music is what? 2/1 is octave doubling. How do we go to the next octave of our experience for humanity? The next octave being the 5th dimension, right? From the 4th dimension. So how do we go to this next level? And in the next level, do we experience time the same way? And the answer is no. And how do we get into that level? We have to learn how to overcome conditionality of love and learn unconditional love to be radically authentic. It's the authenticity. So researchers have done studies on this, and they've shown that it's not that love has the strongest frequency. Actually, the strongest amplitude of emotional states, when measured, is actually authenticity. And authentic love becomes the highest of all of those things, like true love. Now, how can you be authentic if you don't even know your darkness? So when people ask me, how do you get to authentic love? What's the difference between unconditional love and authentic love? Authentic love is when you know your darkness and you love yourself anyway. It's when you, therefore, when you can know your darkness and you love yourself anyway, completely and wholly, then you will also see the world around you in the same light. The people that you know, the world has its darkness, but you love it unconditionally anyway. That's authentic love. Because a lot of people think, oh, I'm just going to be unconditionally loving, love and light, love and light. And they're not even aware of their darkness, so they don't even know what they're bypassing. You understand the nuance here?
Yes, yes.
It's authenticity. It's being able to just be yourself entirely and not worry about the consequence of that. Right? So this is the metaphor of this. Now, how does this relate then to the Last Supper painting? Well, the Last Supper painting, I then said, okay, well, what if I take Metatron's cube, which is not giving me the exact right proportions when I put it on top of the Last Supper painting to show all the lines of perspective? Because clearly Da Vinci used a method to be able to use perspective drawing to make it look three-dimensional, right? He's a master at that.
Yeah.
And so I had tried Metatron's cube by itself without this extra distance. So look at this distance from here to here. Why does it have to be like that? You see a lot of esoteric stuff in Kabbalah that shows the Merkaba like that as well, where there's this slightly different distance, right, between this. It looks like a band going across. So when I started to look at this, then I said, okay, well, what happens when I put this on top? And can I actually see something here? Well, what I noticed is, first of all, the Merkaba lines that go to the corners of the Merkaba, right, which is right here and right here, right? The corner lines on both sides are matching exactly, right? They're not matching if you go to the corner line of the Merkaba up here. It's off from the tapestry. The tapestry doesn't match.
Yeah.
Right? But look what does. The corner of the rectangle of 2 to 1 does. Now remember, all DNA is based on the hexapentacus. It's a pentagon and then 2 hexagons. That is literally the structure of all life. So you've got the structure of all life having implications in this. And I then noticed, wow, so the 2 to 1 rectangle of the King's Chamber is matching the Last Supper. Well, of course it is, because I also had learned that the Last Supper, if you watch Codex, is a map of the King's Chamber.
Yep.
So of course Da Vinci would hide that in there, but for what purpose? Right? Why would he do it? And so then I started looking more deeply into it, and I'd been playing with this particular geometric form.
Wow.
So I thought maybe it has something to do with this, right? It's called a vector equilibrium. You know, it's also, it's called a 64-point star tetrahedron. And I've been seeing this a lot, right? So I'm like, what's going on? There's a reason why I'm seeing all this stuff as it's coming in, right? All as it's coming in. And so then what I did is I started to play with this a little bit to see what I could figure out. And look what I noticed. First of all, that width that was inexplicable, like this distance from here to here, is exactly the distance when you match up the walls to that rectangle. It's exactly the distance of this border around the Last Supper painting.
Yeah.
Why is that border even there? So Da Vinci's giving us clues, right? He's literally giving us clues. And the geometry is just mirroring what we're supposed to learn through all of this. So here you've got this circle, and the Last Supper painting and the King's Chamber room is exactly this proportion that meets up exactly with this smaller Merkaba, right? Line right here. Just extend the line, and you've got a 2 to 1 rectangle, just like the King's Chamber. All right. So, and then remember, there's 36 decan in astrology, and how many holes are in the ceiling over here? 36 holes. And how many astrologies do we have?
12.
Right? We have 12. So then on top of that, we have the Atlantean 36 decanate, which is also found in Dendera Stela, right? So when you add them all together, you have 48 constellations. So those are the Ptolemaic constellations. So there's 3 deacons for every of the one astrological, the normal zodiac that we have. So Taurus has within it Auriga, Eridanus, and Orion.
Yeah.
And Orion is directly related to Osiris in Vitruvian Man. So I thought, how could I overlay this into the Vitruvian Man? So, of course, where do I go mentally? Well, if I'm going to be Da Vinci, I'm going to place the circle around Vitruvian Man inscribe it within, just like this circle right here. I'm going to inscribe it in the exact same way and see what happens. Make sense?
Yep.
So then I did. And this is what came out of it. And among other things, I noticed some other correspondences that were like, what the heck? So I first of all, I started doing the geometry within this structure to see what things could show up here. And I started noticing a clear philosopher's stone relationship. And that when I did that and I simply drew this circle inside of a triangle, the same triangle from the same structure, then I noticed that Jesus is perfectly flanked by a triangle, but he's tilting towards his left. The center point is not over his eye like everyone thinks. It's not correct. And I did this many, many times over. So then I noticed that there's this, triangle that fits around Jesus that's like perfectly fitting around Jesus, but he's leaning a little bit to the left. And why is that? Also, the Eye of Ra on the back wall of the Last Supper is flanked now inside of what looks like a pyramid, this orange pyramid, as an Eye of Providence. And this is just by taking the lines that were used to construct it and extending upon them to see what the next thing would do. You make a Merkaba, then you make another Merkaba inside that Merkaba. And anyone who does geometry knows this is what you do, right? This is just how you go. You keep fractaling it down. Well, I noticed something else. The windowsills on the back wall also could be whited out here because you can only see them a certain way. And I noticed that it makes 3 Hebrew letters. And Will Wire's on my team, and he noticed that first. And the 3 Hebrew letters are Yod-Heh-Vav, which is the name of God. The Yod-Heh-Vav, the Vav is backwards because it's like a mirror down the center.
Yeah.
But it's Yod-Heh-Vav. And the symbol for He represents in Kabbalah the Shekinah. Do you know what Shekinah is?
I don't.
It's the divine feminine. It's the divine feminine. Okay? So I knew something's going on. We've got the Eye of Providence here. We've got the divine feminine coming into the equation. Jesus is tilting to the left for some reason. What's the reason? Now, what happens when I overlay on top of all this? So this is another way to look at Jesus inside that. Right? It's clearly a reference to this. And so when I overlay the Vitruvian Man, which is this, and notice he has 3 belt stars on his abdomen.
Mm-hmm.
And those are the 3 pyramids. Okay, so you got Orion's belt right there. And then you've got a navel right here, which also has a strange look because it has a funny shape. And I never understood what that funny shape was. So these are the 3 pyramids. So if you looked at it from the top, you would see them as diamonds. Right? So this is interesting, right? It's very interesting. Now, also notice I did a post yesterday. There's a bull over the throat.
I see that.
Did you see that post?
Yep.
So here's his horns. Here's his horns, here's his head, here's his nostrils. Because Taurus controls the throat chakra. And Osiris is the great bull of the West. That's his name. It's one of his many names, the Apis bull. That's why the Great Pyramid's called Bull Mountain. Okay? So we've got the 14 cuts inside here. It's all here. And we know from Codex as well that each of these cuts represent a different chamber when the pyramid's overlaid on top of it, proportionally. And I predicted where the next chamber was going to be in the throat chakra, and that's exactly where they published that it is. And that got published in February last year. So this is all coming out in Codex 2. But now look what happens. I took this overlay of Vitruvian Man. And I placed the Vitruvian Man circle inside the Last Supper painting in the same place. So what can we learn from this? This is interesting.
Huh.
So let's take a closer look.
You even got the music going, getting my chills out here.
So now look, the three letters that say God. And I was just in the navel of the world in Peru. And while we were there, we experienced so much magic, it was off the hook. Like, wow.
We'll get
and
into
I'll show
that.
you some of it
We'll get
in
into
just a
that.
moment. We're going to get into it. But it was all related to the navel, because what does the navel represent? You've probably heard of the Ramayana story.
Ramayana.
It's from the Bhagavad Gita. It's a story of Rama and his love Sita. And she gets stolen from him and taken captive and ends up in a garden and unable to escape by this evil, lord by the name of Ravana. And what happens is he has to send Hanuman, the monkey god, to Lanka, the island, to find Sita, his lost love. And Hanuman finds her in this palace, but living outside in the elements, not eating or drinking, because she will refuse any assistance. She's like kind of punishing herself for being stolen. And Ravana wants her to marry him. And so he says, look, I'll give you all the beauty of the palace and the perfection of the palace and all the food and everything, but you've got to marry me. But she's devoted. She's devoted to Rama. And so she's praying every day for this, that he's going to somehow rescue her. Well, Hanuman comes and he's able to find her and then reports back to Rama where she is. And then Hanuman builds a monkey bridge. And the bridge is called the Rainbow Bridge. Right? So it's called the Rama Bridge. Matthias talks about this literally all the time. Okay? Because we have to realize that in a matrix of mind, all the mythology is true. And what we think that we are living is not what we're living. The mythology that we've basically heard about is what we're doing. We're literally living this stuff over and over and over again, and that creates an echo through this Mobius strip of time. So you hear about a story that's a myth. It's actually a story about you being told through thousands of years of time over campfires and everything else, because what we consider our distant past is also our distant future. So that's a trip, right? When you start thinking about that. Well, look at the three belt stars, where they align up.
Yeah,
all I did was place the circle inside, inscribed it within that rectangle, and then exactly where it says divine feminine, the He, Yod-Heh-Vav, is exactly where the three stars are. Okay, now let's look to see what else we could find. And look, this navel is starting to look more and more like a keyhole. And where does the keyhole end up?
The pineal.
Right over the right hemisphere of Jesus' brain.
Huh.
And what's the right hemisphere of the brain? Male or feminine?
Feminine.
Feminine. The key to the hemisynchronization, the divine feminine, right? And then flanked by the divine feminine. And guess what? This whole thing is a room looking at it from the top now. We've got two viewpoints on the Last Supper painting. One is looking at it from the east wall into the king's chamber towards the sarcophagus. The sarcophagus is next to the west wall. It's not in the center of the room. I found the marks on the floor where they scraped it and chipped it out to get it up. It was originally in the center of the room. Well, guess what the proportions of it are? If the sarcophagus were actually in the room, correctly apportioned, right, it's actually going to be, let's see if I can find a better picture for you. So here's see this black rectangle right here?
Yeah.
The window behind Jesus is the sarcophagus.
Oh.
Ooh. It perfectly frames the sarcophagus where it's supposed to be. And that even matches the proportions of the sides of the sarcophagus and everything. The width.
The window's the portal.
The window is the portal. Whoa, right? That's like, what a trip. And on the back side of the sarcophagus, north-facing wall, there's actually an eye on that side of it that's etched into it, like an eye of Horus, because that's where you place your head. You lay in the sarcophagus, you lay right down here, right? And there's even stain marks on the floor, right, inside the sarcophagus where people lay. So this is telling us the sarcophagus needs to be exactly in the center of the room. And for what reason? Well, we found all the astrology markings on all the walls, right? And I'm also going to show you something else that no one else has yet seen, which basically shows, and it's going to be in my season of Codex, which is, going to be super epic. So I'll pull it up right here. And here we go. So are you tracking this so far?
100%. I'm curious to know why you decided to line those up now and you haven't done that before.
Because of the Peru trip.
Mm.
And everything we experience in our life, it's like everything is meant to unfold exactly as it's meant to unfold. On the timeline it's meant to unfold in. Nothing happens by accident. So you see a geometric form, and it has codes within it that are basically upgrading you at a subtle level so that you're finding your soul journey and why you are here, what your purpose is. So let me stop and then share again.
Our timing is always impeccable. I was just looking, today's November 15th, the day we're recording this. There's 3 very crazy dates, things that happen on this date in other years of time. I'm going to give you one right now that is really related to Da Vinci. So in 2017, Leonardo da Vinci's Salvator Mundi was sold at an auction. The painting sold for a record-breaking $450.3 million at Christie's, making it the most expensive painting ever sold at the time. So today, a few years ago, one of Da Vinci's paintings was sold at one of the highest, rates that that painting has ever been sold.
Yes, and it came under impunity because people thought, what happened was it was bid for by Mohammed bin Salman, who is the crown prince of Saudi Arabia. And he was bidding against the Louvre because he wanted it to become a present for his, member of his royal family, who's the crown prince of Abu Dhabi. And he ended up buying it for $400 million. I think it was $50 million in commission. And basically he outbid the Louvre. And so what did the Louvre do? They impugned the integrity and said it wasn't actually done by Da Vinci himself.
What?
Yeah. Because they didn't want it to go to the Louvre. During Sarkozy's era as president of France, the Louvre sold a license right for like $1 billion or something to license their name and create the Louvre in Abu Dhabi. And a lot of French people, it was very highly politicized. French people didn't like it. A lot of French people didn't like that they were going to basically dilute the brand value of the Louvre. It's like putting a Mayo Clinic in Abu Dhabi,
Yeah.
right? And you've got a Mayo up in the United States in Minnesota. So basically, they impugned it and claimed that it wasn't him who did it. But I can absolutely unequivocally prove through the mathematical analysis that it was Da Vinci who did it. And all of the esoteric encryptions that are in it were only those things known by Da Vinci. So I actually reached out to the royal family through a contact and offered to do that. Apparently, the Salvator Mundi painting now is on a cruise ship. It's not a cruise ship. It's on a yacht, giant yacht that's owned by Mohammed bin Salman, because it apparently went missing after the whole integrity of it was impugned, right? But it's a Da Vinci originally. I can tell you that right now, because I've decrypted a ton of stuff on it.
Wild.
A ton. So, okay, so we've got this picture, right? This is kind of a little clearer view. So you can see Jesus inside the triangle, the Yod-Heh-Vav, the Eye of Providence, the Philosopher's Stone triangle, which is this circle and square, and then the expanding circle.
Mm-hmm.
Because the square represents the masculine, the circle represents the feminine, and the only one we see in literature normally is the smaller circle. This is the rise of the feminine to expand up to the top of the ceiling here, right? The rise of the feminine requires this for us to go to the next level, right? So basically, let's see here. Okay. So what I'm going to pull up now is this is the King's Chamber, right? That we made for that was made for Codex 2. So this is me explaining where to move the sarcophagus to.
Wow.
Right? And then what's on the walls.
Oh my God.
All the stuff that's etched into the walls.
What? No way.
Yeah. And you can see an Eye of Ra right there in the back.
Yep.
And on the Last Supper painting, it's in the exact same spot. So each block is a different size because each block is a coordinate for each of the different star systems represented by all the astrological symbols. So here's Orion, for example. Here's all the different ones. Each block is a coordinate in space-time.
Wow. Oh my God. That visual.
And yes. Yep. That's a trip, right?
I've never been speechless on the podcast before, but this is crazy.
Yeah, watch Codex 2. It's going to blow your mind. There's a reason why Gaia made such a massive focus on it on this year's Ancient Civilizations show and the Orion correlation. It's going to literally blow your mind. And so what I'm showing you here is actually a lot of the material. This is going to be in Codex 2. But a lot of what you're seeing here is the material that you're going to see in Codex 3, right? Which is this new decryption stuff, because this is a decryption that continues to layer. I'd already decrypted something, but the thing is, these are so multidimensionally encrypted with such precise geometry that I wouldn't have been able to decrypt it until I had figured out that the only way to make the perfect dodecahedron inside Metatron's cube is by having a pentagon on the outside of it. So somehow the logos must nest inside of the pathos. It's not that one has to lead the other. It's the overall context of everything in your life needs to now be within the heart space. So thinking when you're inside the heart space is a very different thing than thinking without being inside the heart space. See how the geometry is mirroring these questions of philosophy that become really important.
Yeah. Robert, before you move on from that image, I could see that you're standing on top of the flower of life. So I know when you were in the King's Chamber once, you went on a 5 hour, almost psychedelic journey from that point of the Flower of Life, and were able to travel through these constellations. You know, you said you went to the Pleiades with your Arcturian guides. What is the significance of that Flower of Life that you're standing on?
Well, I mean, when I was there and I was laying in the sarcophagus, and remember, I was able to do that like it's an astral travel, right? But I was able to do that without the sarcophagus being even in the right place, right? The sarcophagus is supposed to be in the place that it's supposed to be in, which is in the center of the room. And there's a reason for that, right? That relates to the resonance and everything else. And this also relates back to 11/7, which is the base over the height of the Great Pyramid, which is also 2/1 pi. And the flower of life is what shows up in the ceiling, but it's an 8-petaled flower of life. And then you go outside of that flower of life into the cosmos. And I've experienced it. In 2018, I did. And it's incredible. You know, I went to the boot system, as you said. I went to the Pleiades. I went to Sirius. It was just beyond amazing. And I felt like I was gone for weeks. So this experience, though, is that I'm not talking about going there astrally. I'm talking about going there physically.
Physically.
I believe that the King's Chamber and the Great Pyramid is a spiritual ascension device that a lot of people think, oh, it must have been used to make power and generate power. I think that was one of the ancillary aspects of it. It had to make power to be able to teleport people. And it uses stone computer technology to do it. All the information is hidden and stored inside the quartz crystal that's embedded within the granite.
Is it still active? Can we reactivate that?
It is being activated. It's been activated by the work we did, by several other people. It's being activated right now, and it will be activated fully exactly on the timeline that it's supposed to. It's entirely dependent on our level of consciousness.
What's the timeline?
Over the next 3 years, everything will be fully activated.
Holy shit.
So this is like super intense now because like, wait, what does all this mean, right? Well, let's keep going.
Now we're getting started, brother.
Now we're getting started. So this is the picture, you know, of...
It's literally a bull.
Yep. It's literally a bull because he is the great bull of the West. And you'll notice that the eyes are very different. Why is this pupil very small and this one is very large? Well, it's because this is the left eye of Horus looking at the moon. You have a dilated pupil. And this is the right eye of Ra, which you're looking at the sun, your pupil constricts. Right? So all of this is encrypted. I mean, there's been a bull right here all along and nobody noticed. The most profound thing is that when you realize that the whole world around you is encrypted like this, and being able to see these things and these patterns is the way that we move into higher dimension.
And it's encrypted by our higher selves?
Encrypted by our higher selves. We created this game for ourselves in order to find ourselves. The glory of God is to hide things. The glory of man is finding those things. Right? So like, wow, what a trip. Another bizarre thing, right, that shows up out of this. And of course, with these other lines on here, that means there's other chambers in the pyramid too.
Yeah, there's...
This is the throat chakra line. The king's chamber is right here. Look, on his chest. That's the shape of the king's chamber.
The chevron, yeah.
Exactly. And this is also the shape of Yod. Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh. Same thing, right? And it's also the number 7 right over his heart. So he's the 3 of diamonds and a 7 of hearts. These systems were known for a long time. The 52-card playing deck from the Mamluks was from Thoth as well. So this is like trippy, right? It's like super trip that we're in this. And this is like, actually, Will Wire said this to me. It's pretty funny. He's like, hey, I was giving a talk at Walter Russell's university. And that's what was up, right? So anyway, the thing is that when I place this, you see the 3 stars, the keyhole portal into the right brain, the feminine brain of Jesus.
That music got me going.
Telling us that the sarcophagus, that's right, telling us the sarcophagus belongs in the center of the room. Now, the Hebrew letter, which is the one over the window, is He, which is the suffix that makes a word feminine. The divine presence in the letter He signifies the Shekinah, which is the feminine aspect of God.
There it is.
And the right brain is the feminine part of the brain. And it's proper to use Yod-Heh-Vav is used. It generally serves as a shorthand form of Yahweh. So there's the keyhole. Now, what's the significance? In the Ramayana story, Rama, who is also Orion, shoots an arrow into the navel of Ravana, the guy that's keeping his wife captive. And it kills his ego. It's a metaphor. It's his own ego death.
The key.
It's his own ego death. To basically, because the solar plexus. Now, what's the significance of this? And of course, this is the solar plexus because it's over the abdomen, it's over the navel. This solar plexus is the son of God. The sun. So you got the eye of Ra right up here. This is the right eye of Ra. This is the right eye of Ra. Okay, that's on the back wall of the pyramid as well in the exact same spot as it is on the Last Supper painting. It's the pediment above the window. And you got Jesus, the Son of God, right there. Right? So the metaphor here is like, what the damn? How could all of this stuff work? And this is not one of those things, oh, but couldn't every geometric form? No, it couldn't. If you understand geometry, the only way to put that circle inside that rectangle is the way that I did. And that was the key that unlocked all of this. The knowledge that indeed what I thought was the sarcophagus is exactly at that spot with the exact same proportion. Even the size of the walls of the sarcophagus are the same.
Who moved it?
The thickness. It was moved several times, in fact, but we only know that it was moved. Nobody knows exactly where it was moved from. But again, because I had the LiDAR scans of the whole room, I was able to identify the big chip mark in the floor where they picked it up, which is exactly in the middle of the room. And why is that important? Well, because it's related to this.
So
and it's related to the story of Osiris again.
But
and Orion.
It must have been moved after Da Vinci's time, or he knew this.
No, it was moved before then as well. We don't know. We don't know. Da Vinci could have known where it was originally placed. I mean, I would guess possibly it was. That's a good question. We don't simply know. So these expeditions I've been leading have been finding Orion correlations that are showing up all over the world, right? And I'll show you a couple of them in just a moment. But basically, the reason for this is because it's telling us about the hero's journey and going through a 24,000 year cycle of time. The King's Chamber is a clock of time, space. And that clock of time, space relates to this picture right here. Now, we are in Polaris, is our North Star, right? Part of Ursa Minor. But 6,000 years ago, our North Star was Thuban. And 6,000 years before that, it was Vega. And 6,000 years before that, it was Deneb. And 6,000 years before that, it was Polaris again. So the Earth goes through these 4 stars that guess what shape they make?
King's Chamber.
A 2-to-1 rectangle. Like, what? So this is what it is.
And we're shifting the axis right now.
That's right. This is why we've been getting Aurora Borealis coming so far down. The magnetic poles are unstable at the moment. The magnetosphere is unstable.
Is that why there's so many solar flares as well?
Yes. And we are due, well, I mean, it coincides with the solar flares. It's hard to say that the Earth is doing it to the sun. It's both. It's just part of the cycle. We moved into vernal equinox in 2012. The reason why the temperature of the Earth is increasing is because we're moving into spring in the long cycle. So the temperatures will get hotter and hotter. And when we're in the full summer, which is still going to be, another 6,000 years from now, it's every 6,000 years that you have a new season. We just finished winter. So now we're going into spring. That's why we're going into a silver age that then becomes a golden age in the summer. And then we go into the fall. And we're going back into an iron age again. Right? And then we go into the winter. And it's another cycle of death and rebirth. It just takes 24,000 years. And each time the Earth goes up in temperature and down in temperature. We're in an up cycle. Has nothing to do with the greenhouse gases and all this other BS. It has everything. I'm not saying that we should treat the Earth badly. We shouldn't. But the fact is, it's just a cycle that we're not going to change. It's just part of being on Earth in this matrix of mind. So basically what that means is that you've got this cycle of time that is related right back to all of this. And I'm going to find this one picture. Where'd it go? And the cycle of time is here, right here. Now you overlay Orion constellation, and this star is purportedly going to explode still this year.
What star is that?
Betelgeuse.
Betelgeuse, yeah.
Right. So basically, if you place the two bottom stars of Orion over the King's Chamber like this, and then you put a circle outside of the rectangle and a circle inside the rectangle, where they intersect along here, give you the two shoulder star positions and the head. So it's literally like Orion going through a 24,000 year cycle of time. And we're all born, many believe that we're born through the Orion's Gate portal. We come here into this world through the central star of the three belt stars, which is Al-Nilam.
From where the souls enter the universe, or?
They enter here. When we come to this plane, that we come through the Orion portal of Al-Nilam, right here, the central star. Now, what's also interesting is when you proportionally place Orion on top of the King's Chamber like this, then the three stars are perfectly framed by the sarcophagus proportions. Another thing telling me that it was in the center of the room. Right? So it's telling us that we go through these different pole shifts.
So if Betelgeuse explodes, what would be the implications of that with this map?
It'll be massive in our night sky and in our daytime as well. It'll be the size and brightness of a full moon in daylight in the sky. So it'll change our entire look in the sky.
Would that affect the pyramid at all?
Don't know. I'm sure it's somehow connected. I'm sure that it's somehow connected. By the way, this is my natal chart. Now, I'm telling you, everything is predestined. What shape is the natal chart?
It's a Merkaba.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
What the heck, right?
I'm no astrologer, but that's a pretty nice natal chart.
Now, and if all I did was take a line, make it tangent to the circle on the left side and on the right side, and extend this line across here and across here, that's exactly the King's Chamber.
Oh. You're a walking King's Chamber.
Everything we do, we have the codes hidden within us to do the things that we're meant to do. You follow what I'm saying?
Yep.
That's the drill, right? That is absolutely the deal. So And then we find that there's all this stuff all over, so here's an example. I went to Florianopolis, and this is from the latest version of the Ancient Civilization show. Okay, so it just came out.
Yeah.
Potential Orion clue from our ancient ancestors.
The island of Florianopolis in Brazil, also known as Magic Island, is a very special place indeed. It has been widely rumored to have been the place of many vortices, energetic centers, and strange phenomena that could not be explained. One of the things that stood out to me was that there are 3 megalithic sites. The first is known as the Dragon Head.
Dragon
The
Head.
second is known as Indian Stone. And the third is known as Dolmen. And it sits high upon a mountaintop. The mountaintop looks down on a beautiful ocean vista. Right at the peak of this mountain, we find an entire constellation set in stone. These large megalithic stone blocks that have been placed exactly in the formation of the entire Orion constellation. Why would there be a Stonehenge-style megalithic site for Orion constellation in Florianopolis or Magic Island in Brazil? That's when I started to think maybe there's a larger structure that represents the 3 belt stars of Orion as well. And I noticed that each one seemed to be about a kilometer in distance from the other. And it was not forming a straight line, but rather somewhat of a broken line. The dolmen connected to the Indian stone, connected to the dragon head, was forming exactly the exact same formation of the 3 belt stars of Orion.
One of the biggest connections to Orion is in Japan, of all places.
So this is all telling us the story of Orion. Now, it's also funny because I went to Burning Man this year. And unlike other years, look what's over his throat.
A bull or an alien head.
It looks like a bull, right?
Wow. They knew you were coming.
So, I mean, I looked at other years. It didn't have this, which is a trip. It's like, what the heck is going on? Right? And so you've got literally all of the constellations here. This is another astrologer now who's like corroborating all this work. And it's matching everything on the walls. It's a Stargate, a spiritual ascension Stargate. So this was Burning Man the year before.
No bull.
We live in a matrix. Everything is planned meticulously in advance. Like everything.
Yeah.
There's nothing left to chance. Literally not a single thing. And so all I did was take the circle and inscribe it at the center point of the room inside the rectangle of the king's chamber. The sarcophagus belongs in the center. This is the eye of Ra. And the navel is the death of the ego, and the solar plexus turns from the black hole into a sun. And that's happening when we clear our past traumas. This is all simply a metaphor that's reflecting in the world around us. So simply if I drew a Merkaba inside the circle of the Vitruvian man, right here, right? I drew a Merkaba inside the circle of Vitruvian man, I'm going to be able to create these proportions and create the Last Supper painting.
Wow.
So this is really telling us, and here's the word, God. The Vitruvian man becomes God. Because all of humanity is represented by the Vitruvian man, and we are all God. Now, if you think, wait, I can see how the world around me is divine, and I can see how everyone else is God, I can't be God. I'm not worthy of being God. And I don't want to be egoic. I don't want to be stuck in my ego thinking that I'm God. Well, let me tell you something. That's the imp of the perverse, because if you think the rest of the world and the rest of the universe is God-like and godly, and you're the only thing that's not, then that's egoic. The ego is just making separation. And we go through different degrees of that separation as we walk through life, and there's no mistakes in it. It's not like I'm going to make a bad choice, or I'm making a bad turn, or I'm doing something. No, everything exactly happens as it's supposed to. And the moment you can sink into that surrender is when your whole life can shift. And then you can find all of the things that are special to your individualized hero's journey. That's the point of this life, right? So then what happened on my trip to Peru, right? Because there was a lot of magic there, and all of it was coinciding exactly with this. Here I was, I keep getting this image. And notice what's here in the corners here. What is that? What is that?
Taurus.
Taurus symbol. So on one side, you got the Taurus, and the other side, you got a Taurus with a dot in the center. Well, the circle with the dot represents the central sun. Right? It's the sun. And so one of them is activated, the other one's not. And you got a triple crown. And look at the top, it's got the sheen in Hebrew. So you take Yahweh and put sheen in the center, it becomes Yeshua, Christ consciousness. You talked about November 15th and the Salvator Mundi, right? That's what he's doing. He's representing the hands, the fingers, just like this, of the Hierophant. That is the symbol of the Hierophant. And you've got the two cross keys, the keys of Peter, which are actually the keys of Metatron. They're musical keys. Okay? So the Hierophant rhymes with another word that's an animal.
Elephant.
Elephant.
There we go.
Okay. So are you ready?
Going to Peru now.
For Peru. We're going to Peru.
We got the poncho on. We got the theme going. We could do this segment in Spanish if you want. We were saying.
Sí, en español.
Como quieras. También podemos hacerlo en español.
Está bien.
El elefante.
El elefante. Okay, so the first thing I discovered there was this.
Yeah.
So I just watched Graham Hancock's show, right? And his show is called it's Ancient Apocalypse, season 2. And what he does is the whole thing is focused on Orion. Because he talks about Viracocha, he talks about Quetzalcoatl, Kukulkan, he talks about, Osiris. They're all the same character throughout history. They have different versions. Even Odin matches. He's got the left eye patch, right? Because he's missing his left eye. That's a Horus relationship. And Horus is simply the reincarnation of Osiris. And it's about mankind ascending, right? So that if I tilted this just a little bit, it would look just like what's on Vitruvian Man. If I just tilt it like this way. And then you've got the diamonds, right? Well, there are 3 stones that are at the Saxe Waman.
The sexy woman?
That's right. Saxe Waman. And these 3 stones are unique because they're called the anchor stones. And while I was there, I was only there for a couple hours, and I was like, damn, these are the anchor stones, and there's 11 joints in the stone and 7 stones around it in each case. And I immediately noticed that, wait a minute, the height of the Great Pyramid is 7 and the base is 11. And that gives you a perfect squaring of the circle, the balance of masculine and feminine energy. A square that's based on 7 over 11 will give you a perimeter of the square that's equal to the circumference of the circle that goes up to the top of the pyramid. It's solving an ancient problem, the squaring of the circle. This is also more perfectly found in 2 over 1 pi. Okay. Now, what's interesting about this is that the location of the stones, I asked the people there, I'm like, wait, so where are these stones at, these anchor stones? Because they pointed out the first thing they do. And they're like, well, they're over here. They make, we never looked at the significance of the position of the three stones. So, of course, I was like, well, what do you want to bet? It's going to be Orion's belt. And sure enough, it was. And it was perfect. Perfect proportions of Orion's belt. 7/11, Orion represents the balance of masculine and feminine. In history, what did Orion do? Enoch turned into Metatron. So he got his angel wings because he learned to balance the energies of masculine and feminine.
Wow.
And that's what divinity is. Divinity is balancing the energies perfectly between masculine and feminine.
This is also a Stargate then.
Yep. Everywhere in the world where there's these Orion belt correlations is a Stargate. It's a portal. Every place. So we think it's just some certain thing. It's not. It's like looking at Vitruvian Man and never realizing there's a bull right over his throat. It's hidden in plain sight. So it makes you start to think about everything in a different way, right? It's like, what else could we be missing? Here's this 7/11 relationship. The circle versus the height, right? I mean, the perimeter of this square. They're both 22. And that only happens when you have 51.85397 degrees, which could be referenced as 51 degrees, 51 minutes. Okay, that's pretty beautiful.
Yeah.
It's a threshold knowledge of how to balance the energy of masculine and feminine. The geometry is simply mirroring the precept.
So there's an equation for that.
Yes, there is. That's right. Turns out there's equations for a lot of things. So here I am on the trip, and this dog came up and just literally
So these are the prophets
laid on my feet, so I had to move.
faith into culture. To connect the corpus callosum of the brain in the formation of the chakra system from the back of the brain to the front of the brain, the prefrontal.
I'm talking about this balance of masculine and feminine.
Most of the times, those animals that are in the sacred sites are also guardians of the sites.
Indeed. That's right. So here I was, pointing stuff out while we're there. And I'm like, wait, this is the three stones. Oh my gosh. And then I realized that up on the top, there are three circles that are concentric around each other. And proportionally, they're exactly the same proportion as the size differential of the three stars of Orion's belt. Like the diameter difference and everything. It's like, wow, what a trip. And that's why the pyramids are the different sizes that they are, because the volume is proportionally different for the stars. So this is how advanced these people were.
The volume
They
of the
understood
stars.
these aspects. That's right. So here are the three anchor stones, right? And you can see there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 blocks around it. But then you've got some places where you've got a double joint right here. So the number of joints is 11. Like here and here.
Yep.
You see what I mean?
7-11.
And it's the same on all three stones like this. So that's how I discovered that. It was like, wow, what a trip. Okay, that's pretty cool. Then we go there and we ended up at this one place where I'm looking at all these walls, and it's called Rumikulka. And I noticed right here that there was a bull on the wall and a scorpion right over its pineal gland. Ooh. So a bull is a Taurus, but the Taurus opposite sign in the zodiac is Scorpio. This is all Lemurian. This is super old stuff. And these are symbols of Inca? They're not supposed to be astrological symbols of Inca? Really? Come on. Please. Can you see this bull right here?
Please.
Do you see the two nostrils?
I do see it.
Yeah. You see the scorpion?
Is that at Sacsayhuaman as well?
No, this is at a place called Rumikulka. So while we were there, we started noticing all kinds of stuff all over the walls. And there was like hippopotamus, there's all kinds of stuff. I mean, it was like kind of a trip, right? And let's see if I could find one of the ones that.
And then there's another eye to the right of it.
So this wall is literally covered with etchings that are hard to see because they're super old and they've been worn down, but they're there. And you'll see some of these ones. Let's see if I can find. So we're like pointing them all out. It turned out that whole thing was like a staff of Hermes. And by the way, Alpha Chi Omega is a symbol that is on the Arcturian Mothership, Athena.
That's what I wanted to talk to you about the mothership. Were you inside of this ship at one point? Or are you?
When I went to the different places, I was not in a ship. It was like through a wormhole. And it was like an astral travel, right? But I was shown all this stuff. This is a drawing that I did from 2013 or 2014. And it was of the periodic elements. It was a download I got one day. And I drew it as Alpha Chi Omega. And I don't even know why I did. And I didn't know why I chose the exact proportions I chose of that. And then someone posted it, one of my social media team members posted it on my LinkedIn. And a guy wrote back and said, dude, do you realize that your drawing of Alpha Chi Omega and the musical representation of the elements, of periodic elements, is actually matching the Alpha Chi Omega on the Arcturian Mothership?
What?
Which has been well written about.
And look,
the proportions are exact. Yeah, in past lives. So this came through, like, I mean, look, even the width of the letter A, right? Like right here, and the location of the omega, where it hits right here, is exactly the same. Come on. That's like wild. I didn't even have it. This is so early in my work. I didn't even have a compass then.
What are you remembering, Robert?
That's what we're all living. I'm remembering our future and our past. That's what I'm saying. It's all entangled, right? And if we don't look, we can miss it all.
Divine communication right to you. You could have so much.
Whoops, wrong one. Let's see. I have another version of that. Yeah, it's basically, it was a video of me saying, hey, you got to look at everything. Otherwise, you're going to miss it. And if you miss it, you'll miss it, right? But on this wall right here, let's see. Oh. Where'd it go? Okay, let's try this one.
Yeah, this whole wall is covered. Here's a hippopotamus.
Look, a hippopotamus. There's an eye, the other eye. The eye is here. The ear is right here.
Hippopotamus constellation.
Do you see the roundness of its face?
Yeah, it kind of looks like a bear too.
One eye, here's the other eye, here's the ear. Here's the other ear. You guys see this?
Right there, it looks like a horse head with 2 nostrils and there's 2 eyes right there.
Dude, that's crazy. You know what this is telling me, guys? The feeling I have right now, it's the same feeling I had when I went into Caffrey Pyramid and we discovered that the walls were covered in animals. And we realized that the sarcophagus was in the floor rather than raised, like a bathtub. Right. And that the shape of the room was Noah's Ark.
Oh,
wow. And we knew that was a story of Noah's Ark. Wow. They had it was like a picture that you would imagine, like 360-degree photograph of all the animals that came to Noah's Ark. And so you're kind of high up in Noah's Ark looking down at them, and they're off way in the distance.
So if you look here, there's actually an elephant. Right, you could start to see elephants and stuff on these walls. So there was dragons on the bottom rows. Then it was elephants and hippopotamus, and you'll see elephants showing up like all over the place on this thing in just a moment. but you can see there's stuff that's etched into it that's like lost.
Yeah.
Like you have a hard time seeing it until you start noticing things like, that bull with the scorpion's head on top of it. And so I was like really perplexed over, okay, we find elephants on this wall. Why are there elephants on this wall? We went and did like a activation here.
Oh, wow. Beautiful.
Isn't that beautiful?
Yeah.
She's speaking light language, Lemurian.
That's what I was hearing. Light language.
So, I mean, this is an epic shot. So we started doing these special things. So I'm on the way after we saw elephants. Then we saw this that was like a flower of life stone. And you could see the circle marks. So this is super old stuff. You can see the circles in it. It's making an X going across here. And they're exactly the proportions of a Merkaba.
Yeah.
Coming across here. You see all these little circles embedded in this? It's a full flower of life with 30 circles around the perimeter. And we end up going to this place. And on the way there, I'm like looking up elephants and the significance of elephants because I'm feeling the Hierophant stage. That's what I kept feeling. So I'm looking up elephants on the bus ride on the way up there. And I'm wearing like my giant crystal and everything, right? I'm like, everyone's calling it my crystal chode.
It does kind of look like one.
Yeah, exactly. So we get there and this is so funny. It's raining, right? So they're putting us all in ponchos because we didn't have umbrellas and stuff. So we're all wearing ponchos and like it's windy and cold. Okay. So we see elephants here on this throne. It's the elephant throne.
Oh, I see it.
Do you see the elephant head right here?
All elephants. Yep.
Wow. They're all elephants. It's the elephant throne.
Oh.
So, right. So we start seeing elephants all over the place. And we'd seen elephants on the wall the day before. So I was like, that's interesting because do elephants ever live here in South America?
South America, yeah.
Well, I find out that they did. They just went extinct. Yes, elephants, or rather their prehistoric relatives, did once inhabit South America during the Pleistocene until about 12,000 years ago. South America was home to two of the family haplotypes. These animals looked similar to today's elephants, as well as mastodon. So if elephants went extinct 12K years ago in South America, then why did we just find precision carved elephants at the site?
Much older.
That's kind of a trip, right? That's a trip. And I was talking about dragonflies, and in the rain, this random dragonfly is the one that showed up on top of this Philosopher's Stone pyramid shape right here.
What's with the dragons, Robert? What's going on with the dragons?
You'll see more in a moment because we're going into the magic phase, right? That's what's happening. So they gave us different color ponchos. We look like a rainbow.
The Teletubbies.
All right. So say that again.
Yes, there are lots of elephants.
So here, where are we right now? Where are we?
The name of this place is Chinchero.
Chinchero.
Yes,
what does it mean?
Chinchero comes from the word Chinchai. So that representing for the Incas, we are in the north, in the way to the north. Chinchai also means a cat.
The cat? Orion.
The house of Orion.
The house of Orion?
Yes, Chinchai.
Come on.
Chinchai is the name of this.
So this is the house of Orion. And so why are they all elephants? Look, here's the eye, the elephant.
Here's the trunk coming. This is broken. You see it again over here. Here's an elephant. It looks like a mammoth. Then an elephant there. Another one there.
Look, these are all elephants. There's an eye, an elephant coming down, another elephant here, right? Its trunk all coming across, like connecting.
Another one there. Another one there. Another one there. This is the symbolism of the Hierophant.
There are symbols on that back chair.
Hold on.
Look, there's an elephant right there.
See this chair?
Look at this.
Yeah.
Look at that right here.
That
There's
one's
an eye,
very
the other
clear.
eye, its trunk, right? It's like, dude, it's everywhere. And then even in the side of the chair, here's the eye and then the trunk coming down. It's a trip. I mean, like, this was wild. And so we're like, what the heck? And no one had ever seen this before. So for this to have been carved by man would mean that it would have to be carved like 12,000 years ago, making this one of the oldest prehistoric, man-made sites in the world.
If it was man-made.
Right. I mean, look, it looks like a chair that's pretty flat right there, right? It's like that's carved out like perfectly. So it's like, what the heck is going on here? So then we go a little bit further and we find this place, which is right here. And I immediately notice, I'm like, wait, there's again an elephant shape. So like eye right here, another elephant shape right here. And then what about here? There's an eye right here, another eye, and another elephant trunk coming down. What is this?
Yeah, I saw this on your Instagram.
You got to stop. You got to stop and notice what's going on around you. Stop and notice the encryptions you left yourself through time.
You left yourself.
That's right, because it's all a U inverse. Now look at this. Here's an eye right here. And then an elephant trunk coming down. And that's carved out for you to sit inside of. And then there's another elephant up here, like a herd, with its eye right here. And then its ears right here.
Is there like a Chi in the center of that wall a little bit? Like
Of the hole,
like
cut out?
Like
It
an
looks
X?
like it, yeah, it does. It looks like an X.
Yeah. I know, but you were far away from me.
You got your staff of Hermes.
Yep.
Elephant eye.
Yeah, so that's a crazy story about that too.
You see it? It's a Vesca Pisca shape. You see it, Jessica? Okay. There's another elephant above it up here on its side. Right? It's all elephants.
So here's what's wild. The day before, I was giving a speech and I was talking about the staff of Hermes and the staff of Asclepius and how Orion was cured by his ego death through the staff of Asclepius by Ophiuchus, the opposite sign in the sky. That's right above Scorpio. So the next day, one of the managers comes up to me and he said, I have a gift for you. It's this rod I bought. It's a walking stick that you could use here. And I was like, what? And I look at it and it's got a jaguar, a condor, and a snake coming up it. I was like, and he wasn't even in the talk. He didn't know that I'd given that talk about that. So I'm like walking around all of a sudden with this staff of Asclepius.
What's the metaphor there?
It was necessary. And I got many gifts like this on the trip. Like where people just randomly gave me gifts that had deep significance. You'll see more of in a moment. So then we noticed that, it wasn't just, you see that?
Yeah.
Wasn't just that. Now look. I couldn't probably make a sculpture as good as this. This is a mammoth.
I see it now. Yeah.
Here's the eye. Here's the other eye. Here's the trunk. And here are the tusks.
The tusks. Yep.
I mean, what? This has got to be like 12,000 plus years old, right? It's like, what in the heck is that all about?
What did elephants
It's nutty.
mean to you before the trip?
I knew that it had something to do with the Hierophant because Da Vinci encrypted all of this in the Ophiuchus painting, right? So in Ophiuchus, if I can find it here. It's from like a year ago. Let's see. All right. So there's an elephant off to the side of Ophiuchus, the sitting god, holding the snake on his lap that was painted over in the 19th century as a leopard skin. But if you look at the background, there's a sphinx right over here. And then there's a crocodile laying down right here. And there's a deer that's not afraid to be hunted by Ophiuchus. And there's the rod of Asclepius. Right? And then he's also got a crown on top of his head that's the shape of a beehive with a triple crown, the Hierophant. The same thing, the triple crown. And he's sitting on a demon. And here's the eye, here's the other eye of the demon. Here's the hook bill nose of the demon. Here's his arm resting. Here's his elbow. The whole thing is encrypted. Look, there's a bull head in the background, a skull that's behind this branch. Represents the death of the ego of Orion, which is the bull. Right? So all of a sudden, and there's a scorpion right here. And on the back of the scorpion, it says Tav Aleph, TA, which is Alpha Omega. This is called the Bacchus painting. Nobody understood it, right? And now you could actually see it and realize that within it, there are all these things. You know, here's the crocodile. Here's the Sphinx. Right? The print, this is the sitting god. He's got the bull over his shoulder. He saves Orion. There's a snake head.
Yep.
On his lap, right there. So the whole thing becomes this encryption. And you realize then that the whole story is just not what we thought, right? It's literally not at all what we thought. And you have to start to recognize as well that we're going through a process to relearn ourselves, right? There's an elephant off on the side of the Ophiuchus. And I want to find that for you, but I don't think I have it in this set right here of pictures. So I won't be able to do it. It's going to probably take too much time and I can't stay too long. But, you know, here's the face of Orion on the wall. Right above the bull that's right here that has my logo right on the wall. Which Dolores Cannon said was going to be the case, right? That's kind of wild, but it's, you know, how it went down. And I only learned about that much, much later. You know, that this is what Dolores had actually said, which is kind of crazy, but it's true nonetheless. So the whole thing is about the Hierophant. I think I might be able to have it here. Let's see. Yeah, here we go. So here's the elephant right here. Do you see the elephant eyes?
Yeah, I see the eyes.
And the trunk coming down.
Yeah.
It represents the Hierophant stage. Here's the crown. Here's the scorpion. The tail. Here's the demon. There's another demon behind him back here. And here's the skull. So Da Vinci is telling us that there's a relationship because elephant rhymes with Hierophant. The Hierophant stage is the priest-king stage. It's sovereignty for humanity is what it's representing.
That's the
triple
stage
crown
we're at right now?
That's the stage we're going into now. We are in that stage
Going
now.
into sovereignty.
That's right. Going into sovereignty, precisely.
What was before sovereignty?
And enslavement. That's where we've been. right? This is the Vitruvian Man. I said there was going to be the new chamber right here, and there was a new grand gallery leading up to it. Well, they published the paper saying this is the structure.
There's another grand gallery.
There's another grand gallery, which is exactly what I said it would be. And that means that there's more structures yet still. Here's the staff of Hermes that I was just telling you about on Mona Lisa. Right? So everything that we think is a certain way is not necessarily that way. That's kind of the point. Here are those 4 stars of the North Pole. Orion transiting through that over 24,000 years. We think it's a gradual shift to each of the North Pole stars. We don't know that it is. We have no evidence that it is. We just know that every 6,000 years there seems to be a giant flood. So basically, it's all coming down to this. Hero's journey. And that's what I believe all of this is telling us. The transformation of the outer world comes when the transformation occurs within us. Because it's a U inverse. Everything that we see on the outside is simply a reflection of what's on the inside. And this is where, you see things like, this is that rock formation at the top. It's a megalithic site in Florianopolis, Brazil, that's making exactly the Orion constellation in stone.
Another Stargate.
Another Stargate. Exactly. So this is, you can see it right here. This is the actual stars. So why is it Orion keeps showing up everywhere? So I'm talking about Orion, and then guess what? It leaks that ChatGPT is going to launch their new, 50 version, ChatGPT 50, and they're changing the name to what?
Orion. No way.
And Meta, and it happened while we were there. And Meta changed their name on their goggles to Orion as well. Their new AR goggles.
What?
Look it up.
Wait, why?
What
though?
a coincidence. Because it's in our consciousness now, dude. That's why.
It's like
that is why.
It's like a collective, I've heard you call it a collective mandala effect.
It's a collective mandala. So we didn't even realize this, but the first day we got to the trip and we were starting to see all these miracles happening every day. Everyone was like, well, what's all the miracles? Well, then we get to the city of Cusco, and it turns out they were having a holiday. And the holiday was the celebration of the day of the man of miracles. So we're seeing fireworks going off for the man of miracles. Like, what? In Christ consciousness, okay? Then someone says, oh, one of the guys on our trip's Indian. He's like, hey, Robert, you know that this week is Diwali in India? And I said, the Indian New Year. He goes, yeah, we're celebrating the building of the Rama Bridge. We never planned that. And wait, weren't we all wearing rainbow trench, like freaking rainbow colored, like ponchos?
The Teletubbies.
So then we go to the top of Ollantaytambo on Diwali. And while we're there, I have everyone get into a Merkaba formation.
Oh.
So there's like 60 people, 24 people making the triangles. I wish I had a drone footage, but they wouldn't let us put a drone up there. But we're making a perfect Merkaba. And then I'm in the center with Sitara, and we both do like a prayer. And the prayer was the rainbow body activation. And what a coincidence that literally at the same time, and this is a dragon head. This is Dragon Head Mountain over here. And you're going to see right here, where my cursor is an eye of Ra that's carved into the side of the mountain. And this mountain is well known for being carved because it has the face of Viracocha carved into it right here. Viracocha is Orion. Here's
Wow.
the eyes, the two eyes, the mouth. And look, up here on top, you'll see a jaguar, which is also a symbol of Orion, right here.
And
You see the jaguar face right here?
Yeah.
Here's the nose of the jaguar. Here's the eye. I mean, who carved these things? They're huge.
The giants.
They're totally massive. And look, you've got an eye of Ra carved into the side of the mountain too. Another face up here too.
yeah, the face of Viracocha. So it's very common that they
See three kinds of architectures also.
carve the mountains.
But the entire mountain is a freaking dragon head. Here's the eye.
Have you
Here's the dragon head. And this is also carved into the side of it, which is like its mouth.
heard of Montserrat?
The rainbow
Yes.
goes all the way.
I was just there last
Look
week.
at the rainbow. Oh, it's beautiful there.
444 when it happened.
Another dragon mountain.
Look at that rainbow. It's a double rainbow.
Look at that.
Yeah. Double rainbow.
And we can see it from
Alpha Chi Omega Taurus, everyone. The rainbow's a lead actor.
paid actor.
we're literally doing the rainbow body activation. And look, you can see the mouth of the dragon right here. Here's the eye of the dragon. It's a dragon head. The dragon represents the next dimension. So it's Dragon Head Mountain. And then look at the rainbow. And there's another rainbow above it right up here. It's like a double rainbow on top of, I've never even seen one in my life.
The
And
dragon.
we're doing a rainbow body activation.
You said the dragon represents the next dimension.
Yes, because when the snakes become the dragon that eats its own tail, the Ouroboros, that's when you've moved into the next dimensional frame. When you realize that the nature of time is that it both goes forward and backwards at the same time. Right? And I did a post on this yesterday on Instagram, right? Which I said, if, we could all see what the nature of time looks like, here's what it would look like. And it was, exactly that, right? It's like this.
It looks like
Where it
almost
looks like it's both going
a
forwards. It's like it's going forwards and backwards at the same time.
looks like a ship too.
It's a Mobius strip. Yeah, it does. So this is a trip, right? So here we have this. And then I ask Eden, I'm like, Eden, where are we going for dinner? She goes, I don't know. I didn't arrange it. So, and we didn't tell anyone in the tour group that we were going, due to this rainbow body activation and all next level DNA and all this stuff. We've been wearing the ponchos, all this stuff. And guess where they take us? They take us to this indigenous ceremony for the new moon. It was on Diwali, beginning of the new year, which is a celebration of the Rama Bridge, the Rainbow Bridge, by Hanuman to save Sita. And guess where they take us? They take us to a place that's actually called the Children of the Rainbow Bridge.
No. Huh. Miracle.
I mean, come on. Exactly. We're now in the stage of miracles, like legit miracles. And we took a picture with that in the background.
How do we recognize a miracle for what it is?
A miracle is like extreme synchronicity. First of all, if you believe in miracles, you'll experience them. If you don't believe in miracles, you'll never experience it. It's the same thing with anything in physics. Whatever you don't believe in, you will not experience. So, it's like if you think you can or you think you can't, you'll be right. The world is not about believing, or seeing as believing, it's believing as seeing. There are three types of people: people that believe in miracles, those that don't believe in miracles, and those that, and therefore never experience miracles, and those that understand and know that life itself is the miracle and you are the miracle. And every moment should be savored and lived to its fullest. And all of us on this trip, we had a profound experience because it was so wow. I couldn't even believe how many miracles we experienced on this trip. And that is the stage of the Hierophant. The magic. You know, we found stuff on the walls that actually shows like the history of alien intervention into like humanity. And it was right at this place called Napa Iglesia that was epic, right? This is a scene from that. I mean, the whole thing was just beyond magical. It really was. So you could say whatever you wish, but we had like the most magical experience of all trips I've ever been on.
Wow.
And I think that is a symbolism of where the world is going. And if I could just kind of take it back now to, you know, kind of what, you know, I think this all means, right? Actually, wait a minute. There we go. Yeah. So what does this all mean? At the end of the day, I think this is telling us about our own divinity. I think this is telling us about who we are and to remember to balance these energies, the Hierophant. You know, I take screenshots of everything that has significance to me as I'm experiencing it. You know, all this stuff shows up to me, and everything is a clue. Every person you meet, every circumstance you come in contact with, everything you do is showing you this.
Wow.
What we thought was reality is not really reality. What we thought was a blank wall that had nothing on it is not really a blank wall. You could see the two pupils here of Orion's face, right? And his nose right here, and his lips right here. It's all there. We just have to have eyes to see it. And our ability to experience those miracles is directly tied to our own frequency and state. And then we could start to decipher and realize that the bull has been there all along. How many things have we missed along the way? Right? This was my license plate of my truck that I was driving in Austin yesterday. And it's 314 right now, which is pi. And everything that you experience, you start to record and start to recognize and understand. Here's the King's Chamber, right?
Is there
It's
any
a model of that.
Is there any part of the Vitruvian Man that is an elephant?
If it is, I haven't found it yet, but probably I will, because you have to be resonating at the frequency of the elephant to see the elephant in the fifth dimensional form that it's hidden in.
Yeah.
It'll probably be somewhere.
It's the
right?
private
It'll probably
parts.
be hidden
I saw
inside
it.
there. Really?
It's the trunk and the and the ears.
I'll look more closely at that.
Don't zoom in too much, Robert. Don't zoom in too much.
Yeah, exactly, right? It's like, wow. But no, I mean, I never thought to just simply put Vitruvian Man inside of this thing. And then it says the Son of God and it's over his solar plexus. Come on. Really?
It's like, what's next? What else is possible?
Our consciousness can only expand to the volume of the cage of our belief systems. So we are the only rate limiter on how much that expansion could actually be realized. And then we have to take responsibility for that fact.
What's the rainbow body?
The rainbow body is when you have balanced the masculine and feminine, and you actually achieve a balance towards a rainbow body. And I'll show you what I caught it on film once when I was taking a photograph of my friend, Alan Green. And this is a candid photograph. This is pretty epic. And just because you're in it doesn't mean you're always in it too, right? I mean,
Oh, what? Oh my God. Wow, he's in an avatar state.
yep.
Wow. That's wild. That's beautiful.
So the rainbow body is when you've balanced your chakras and they're emitting all their colors in an equal balance. And then you also get an upgrade in your DNA that commences. It's already started for all of us that are in the ascension. Not everyone is, but the upgrade in the DNA is related to a transmutation of the carbon that we have in our DNA matrix into silicon. And oxygen turns into sulfur. It's higher octave. And phosphorus replaces nitrogen, and hydrogen stays the same. And there are 8 nucleotide pairs, and you have a 12-strand that becomes a 24-strand DNA when you look at time going both directions. We already go forward in precession of equinox every year through each month. But actually, at the same time, we're going backwards in precession. It's the nature of how time goes forward and backwards. If you got rid of your clocks and just looked at the sky, you would realize that we're a Mobius strip. We're going forward. That's why we just moved into the age of Aquarius from Pisces. Well, the next cycle of, Pisces it should have gone into Aries. But because it goes backwards in precession just means backwards. Then we go backwards in the precession long cycle, and 1 degree is, 66 years in that cycle, versus 1 degree here is 1 day in the processional cycle. But as we're going forward, we're going backward by the same proportion. Follow what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's just on a longer cycle. It's literally a Mobius strip.
So the pyramids, could we say that they were built in the future?
Yes. And the past. This is the only explanation I can give for why they're built on exactly the speed of light as a latitude. It's 29.9792458 degrees north. That is exactly the speed of light, 299,792,458 meters per second, down to 1 meter accuracy. The longitude is 1 over pi, 31 degrees, 8 minutes, and 3 seconds. 3183, that's 1 over pi exactly. And 1 over pi divided by 360 degrees gives you 0.864864864. And that's the 86,400 seconds in a day. So therefore, the Great Pyramid has one axis of the speed of light and the other axis is time. It's beyond genius. And we didn't have longitudes when the pyramid was built. We didn't have latitudes either. And the pyramid was built using the foot, meter, and the cubit, which are all interconnected measurement devices. A circle with 1 meter as its radius gives you 1/12 of the circumference of that circle becomes the Royal Egyptian cubit. And it has 20.616 inches in it, which is, it has 20.616 feet is the exact circumference of that circle, which is the number of inches exactly that go into the Royal Egyptian cubit. And if I make a pendulum that has 1 meter as its radius length, and I swing it, it takes 1 second for it to traverse exactly the Royal Egyptian cubit. So now we have all 4 measurement systems, the metric, the imperial, the ancient, and time, all into one geometric form that just has 1 meter as its radius. Come on.
Robert, in 1920, on November 15th, the League of Nations, an international organization founded after World War I, was established to promote peace, and it held its inaugural meeting in Geneva, Switzerland, which is where they hold Davos every single year. Does that have any significance to you?
Only that I'm supposed to go to Davos this year to speak, and the fact that you keep bringing up November 15th is making me really think a lot right now. Because our mutual friend, Gabby Kovalenko, also sent me a random text today saying, Happy November 15th. And I was thinking, what's the significance of November 15th to her? And then you bring this up now, which is like, what is going on with November 15th? So there must be something significant just related to that.
Yeah.
And I don't know what it is, but it is a full moon today. And it's the last of the supermoons for the next 12 months. And it's also the beaver moon. The beaver moon. It's when the beaver builds a dam. So I'm interested to know what other significance there might be to November 15th, but I feel like there's something.
Yeah. Well,
Like,
it's close to, because it's also a Friday. So it's close to Friday the 13th, which is very connected with the Knights Templar.
Yes, but it's not.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not Friday the 13th, though.
It's close.
So November 15th in history. It's weird. This has got to be.
Well, there's one more thing about 15th that I looked up, and it says, tell me.
On November 15th, Elizabeth Hobbs Keckley Emancipation Deed was signed. This marked the beginning of a new life in freedom that was full of accomplishments as a successful entrepreneur, a generous philanthropist, publisher, and author. So this is like the first Emancipation Declaration against slavery?
To sovereignty.
Some sort of sovereignty. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's a mystery that somehow will reveal itself. I'm sure of that.
One last thing I'll say on that, and ChatGPT says, on November 15th, 2024, the Orion constellation became increasingly prominent in the evening sky, marking the onset of its peak visibility during the winter months. So today, Orion became the most visible in the star in the evening sky.
Okay, that's probably it.
I had to leave it for the end.
So, yep, that's probably it. And I'm going to be with Matthias on the Orion's Gate portal in Egypt on December 12th. We're doing a thing together there, and I'm looking forward to it. But yeah, no, that's probably it. It's about Orion finding its prominence, and it's about this Hierophant, and it's uniquely timed. I mean, look, yesterday when I made this discovery, then, shortly thereafter, I found out that, Gaia came out with their new season of Ancient Civilization, which is called Orion as Above, So Below. I don't think it's a coincidence. The fact that these companies name their thing Orion. Orion is definitely peaking right now from a awareness perspective. And in a matrix of mind, the only way to change and transform that world that you live in is awareness. Awareness makes the changes. So on that, I'm going to have to go now. But such a pleasure to be with you today, Emilio. You got a lot of new stuff that no one else has heard. So
thank you so much, brother. Yeah.
Thank you.
One last thing I'll ask you is, what is your big call to adventure right now?
My big call to adventure. You know what? Just to surrender. My gene keys say that one of my jobs is just to jump into the void without fear. And the hardest thing to do is to jump into the void when you don't know what's going to happen, and that void is vulnerable. And that void is also, that vulnerability can only be felt and achieved when you're absolutely authentic. So I'm in a new stage of life right now where I'm only living radical authenticity. And then owning that. So the challenge I would give to everybody for their own adventure is to find their own radical authenticity and to embrace it. The sooner you do, you will raise your frequency into all these different stages of higher awareness. And it's all meant to have us realize that worthiness is not a function of what we did or didn't do. Worthiness is a function of our birthright. Just the fact that we were born makes us worthy of divinity. Remember that. A lot of people use a lot of self-negative narratives to basically, walk away from what they perceive as their destiny, even though destiny was all along just the free will of their higher self. But we often think that we have to suffer in order to succeed. We often think that we have to go through a mountain of difficulty. We have to feel the pain to climb the mountain. Otherwise, climbing the mountain and scaling its summit was not satisfying enough somehow. It's time for us to let that go and just realize it's our birthright and who we are. Divinity is within our grasp when it's in our consciousness. And just always remember that if you think that the rest of the world is divine and you're not, and you're the only part of it that's not, then you're on an ego trip.
Yeah. What's the most authentic act you did this year?
Fell in love. And I knew it could end in heartbreak. And it did. But it was so worth allowing myself that radical authenticity and allowing myself to fall so deeply in love. And enlightenment is when we choose love over being right. We may know ultimately what we did might prove to be wrong. But to recognize that being right or wrong doesn't matter when love's at stake. That's what I would say. The most authentic thing I did all year was to vulnerably and authentically fall in love. And I don't think it's the most vulnerable act of this year. I think it's probably the most vulnerable act of my life.
That's beautiful, brother. Thank you for sharing that.
So I'm proud of it. When we fall in love with our journey, even our sufferings, then they transmute to gold. And if you want to live a magical existence, then start believing that you can, first and foremost. And then somehow the universe will make your life magical. And I can tell you, my life is very magical. As soon as I committed to the authentic path, things really ramped up in magic.
We saw that all today, and I could really feel your heart right now, brother. Thank you so much for being here, for staying true to your mission and going forward with it, and being able to share it so freely with us. It's such a gift.
Thank you, my friend. It's great to see you.
Great to see you.
And next time you got to come up, next time you're here, let me know.
I will.
And we'll have dinner together. You can stay at my house.
I would love that. I would love that.